Kaley Cuoco. What if the woman who made the world laugh was breaking behind the scenes? You know Penny, the smiling neighbor who lit up living rooms for more than a decade. But you don't know the battles, the heartbreaks, the losses, and the quiet strength that shaped the real Kaley Cuoco. This is the story of the girl who grew up too fast, loved too deeply, fell hard, stood back up, and learned that true happiness isn't found in applause, it's found in peace. You've heard the laughter. But what happens when the cameras stop and the silence gets loud? For many years, people around the world watched her smile, joke, and brighten every scene she entered. Her life looked perfect from the outside, touched by fame, success, and the kind of public love that most actors only dream about. But behind that light was also a journey filled with pressure, doubt, loss, and strength that few ever truly saw. This is a life lived in spotlights and in shadows, where applause and loneliness sometimes stood side by side. Before the world knew her as Penny, she was just a young girl trying to find her place. She grew up learning lines instead of playground songs and spent her teenage years on sets while other kids went to school dances. Years later, she became the heart of one of the most loved sitcoms in television history, making millions laugh and feel connected to a character who was warm, real, and unforgettable. But her story did not end with The Big Bang Theory. She grew into a woman who built her own path, moving from actress to producer, from on-screen star to a mother with a new purpose and a different kind of happiness. This is not a story about gossip, rumors, or headlines. It is about the real person behind the fame, the effort, the hurt, the growth, and the courage it takes to keep going when the world only sees your smile. If this story ever made you smile, stay with me, because the truth is far more human and far more meaningful than the spotlight ever showed. To understand how she rose, how she fell, and how she found herself again, we must go back to the beginning. To understand the woman the world thinks it knows, we have to start before anyone knew her name. Fame didn't arrive, it crept in, one early call time at a time. She was born into a calm and steady suburban life, where nothing seemed unusual from the outside. Her parents were loving, supportive, and protective, and no one could have guessed that their little girl would soon step into the world of cameras and scripts. At just 6 years old, she filmed her first Barbie commercial. The bright lights, the makeup chair, and the friendly crew felt surprising and exciting. And suddenly her life had a direction she never planned for. One small commercial began a journey that would slowly reshape her entire childhood. While other children spent their weekends in parks or playgrounds, she spent many mornings in the car before sunrise, heading to auditions and sets. She also lived a second life at the same time. She was a talented young tennis player, ranked among the best in her region. That meant foggy early drives to the tennis court, gripping a racket in one hand and a script in the other. The seats of her father's car became her breakfast table, study corner, and rehearsal space. Sweat from practice mixed with leftover makeup from shoots, and that was her normal. From an early age, she learned to switch roles without thinking. 1 hour she was an athlete fighting for points on the court, and the next she was a smiling child actor who had to deliver lines again and again until the director was satisfied. Small acting roles started to come more often. She appeared in tiny parts in movies and TV shows, sharing brief moments with well-known actors. These roles were not big, and most people ignored the names in small credits. But for her, every job was a lesson. She learned how to smile on cue, how to stay still under hot lights, how to wait for hours without complaining, and how to hide her feelings if she was tired or upset. Adults on set often praised her for being professional, and that praise became part of her identity. Being perfect started to feel like a requirement, not a choice. But as the work continued, something else began to fade. She missed birthday parties, school events, simple hangouts, and carefree afternoons that other children took for granted. Her life looked special, but it was also isolating. There was no room to be messy, loud, or lost. She was growing up too fast, and she didn't even realize it at the time. Later, she would look back and admit that she never fully lived a normal childhood. While other kids were learning who they were, she was learning who she needed to be for everyone watching. The schedule grew heavier, and so did the expectations. And at 16, she makes a choice that closes one door forever and opens another she can't yet see. Some doors close quietly, their echoes last years. At 16, she stood between two futures. One was tennis, the sport she had trained in since childhood, where coaches saw promise and family saw discipline. The other was acting, a path that was already shaping her life, pulling her from one set to another, demanding more time and more of her identity with every passing month. She knew she couldn't keep both worlds alive. Tennis needed full commitment, and so did acting. So she made the choice to put down her racket and walk away from the sport that had once given her peace. It didn't end with drama or tears. It ended in a quiet decision, one that felt simple in the moment, but would change everything that followed. Leaving tennis gave her time, but it didn't give her clarity. She stepped fully into acting, only to discover that the road ahead was not smooth or welcoming. Casting directors recognized her face, but not her name. She became that girl from that one thing. She worked, but she wasn't remembered. He was praised, but she wasn't chosen. Audition rooms became a second home, cold chairs, long waits, and polite smiles from people who would forget her the moment she walked out. Over and over she heard the same soft ending to hopeful conversations. "Thank you, we'll call you." They rarely did. These were the invisible years. Not failure, but invisibility. She was working constantly, collecting small roles that paid bills and filled resumes, but they didn't fill the growing need to be seen, truly seen. The camera was close, yet something always felt out of reach. She was present in the industry, but not part of it. Her life became a cycle of early mornings, late nights, and endless waiting in between. Her friends outside the industry moved forward college, dating, first apartments, while she stayed stuck in a loop of almost. But invisibility also shaped her. With every small part, she learned something. She learned how to take direction without losing herself. She learned how to be patient when everything inside her wanted answers. She learned not just to act, but to understand characters, timing, delivery, and emotion. The craft became muscle. Discipline became survival. She grew sharper, more grounded, more prepared. What she lacked in recognition, she gained in resilience. Still, the emotional cost was real. She was always working, yet she felt unseen. She had chosen this path, and now she had to carry it, even when it felt heavy. Some nights she lay awake, wondering if she had walked away from the wrong dream, but the only way out was forward. She kept showing up. She kept reading lines. She kept believing that something would eventually break in her favor. Then, a single casting breaks the free fall, just enough oxygen to keep going. Not every break is a breakthrough, but some are bridges. When she landed a role on Charmed, it finally felt like proof that her years of effort were leading somewhere. Being part of an established, successful show brought a sense of stability she hadn't felt before. People on set respected her, fans started to recognize her, and for the first time she felt confident that she wasn't just passing through Hollywood, she was becoming part of it. Charmed gave her visibility, but more importantly, it gave her belief. The long waiting rooms and rejection emails felt a little lighter, and she thought maybe this was the moment everything would change. But in Hollywood, one win doesn't protect you for long. After Charmed, she entered the world of pilots, and this world had its own harsh rules. A pilot could be celebrated one day and forgotten the next. She filmed projects that seemed promising, shows that had energy, humor, or heart. But many never made it to a second episode. She collected credits that looked shiny on paper, but they didn't build a stable future. These were almost victories, enough to stay hopeful, but not enough to break through. Her name was out there, but it didn't stick. Casting directors praised her talent, yet she still wasn't the first choice, or even the second. She kept hearing how great she was, but still heard, not this time, when it mattered. Then, in 2006, she auditioned for a new sitcom about a group of scientists and the girl who lived next door. She liked the script, she liked the tone, and she felt connected to the role. She went in with hope, delivered her lines, and walked out, thinking maybe this was finally her moment. But the answer came back as another no. They told her she was too young, too soft for what they imagined. It wasn't a dramatic rejection. It was quiet, professional, and polite. Yet it stung in a way she didn't expect. She wasn't bad. She simply wasn't it. That hurt even more. This was the ache of being almost chosen, close enough to see the door, never close enough to walk through it. She didn't cry, she didn't quit, but she carried the disappointment with her. It was another reminder that success in Hollywood wasn't only about talent or hard work. Timing, luck, and other people's vision all played a part, and she had no control over any of it. Still, she didn't stop. The invisible years had already taught her endurance, and Charmed had reminded her that she belonged. She decided to keep going, to keep showing up, and to trust that something would eventually bend in her favor. A year later, the phone rings, the role has a new name, and so does her future. Sometimes the rewrite isn't the script, it's you. When the original character, Katie, was rewritten into Penny, everything changed. The producers called her back almost a year after rejecting her, and this time she walked into the room with a different energy. She didn't try to impress anyone or force anything. She simply read the lines as herself, and the role fit her in a way nothing else ever had. The second audition landed, and Penny became hers. It wasn't just a casting choice. It was the moment where years of almost, nearly, and not quite finally turned into yes. From the very first week on set, the chemistry with the cast felt natural. The show had brilliant characters, full of scientific jokes and academic humor, but Penny became the bridge between the audience and the genius-filled world of the boys. She was warm, relatable, and easy to connect with. Viewers didn't need to understand physics or math to enjoy the story. They could simply follow Penny's reactions, her humor, and her heart. That balance helped the show find its rhythm. Performing in front of a live audience brought a special spark. Laughter was instant. Energy was real. Every take felt like a shared moment, not just acting for a lens. She learned timing, pauses, and delivery in a way that only live laughter can teach. The cast clicked on and off camera, and that bond showed in the final product. The show also built credibility by using real science. Consultants made sure equations, theories, and references were correct. And later, when a real neuroscientist joined the cast, the show's identity became even stronger. Viewers felt both entertained and respected, and people who never cared about science before were suddenly hooked on a sitcom filled with whiteboards and lab talk. Season by season, the audience grew. What began as a light comedy turned into one of the most successful shows in television history. Penny became not just a character, but a cultural reference. People dressed like her, quoted her lines, and saw pieces of their own lives in her struggles and growth. Fans around the world connected with her long before they connected with the complex theories in the background. She was the heartbeat, the warmth, the human doorway into a universe of brilliant minds. With success came a new level of attention. Magazine covers, interviews, red carpets, and worldwide recognition became normal. The sitcom wasn't just a job anymore. It was a phenomenon, and she was at the center of it. The girl who once waited in quiet casting rooms was now one of the most familiar faces on television. It felt like a dream finally coming true. But fame has a way of giving and taking at the same time. The laughter was real, the love from fans was real, and the success was undeniable. Yet, behind it all, a new question slowly formed, one she didn't know she would have to answer. Success crowns her queen of comedy, then quietly asks what the crown costs. Spotlights warm and burn. With success at its peak, her life looked perfect from the outside. The show was a global hit, her character was adored, and she became one of the highest-paid actresses on television. But behind that brightness lived a pressure she had never known before. Every week brought long hours, studio lights, and expectations that never seemed to rest. The days often stretched to 12 or more hours, and the laughter the audience heard in 22 minutes took days of work, retakes, timing, and emotional energy. Then came something she didn't expect. Headlines focused not on her talent, but on her paycheck. When the cast began earning $1 million per episode, the news spread everywhere. Instead of celebrating her success, people debated whether she deserved it. Talk shows, blogs, and strangers on the internet questioned her worth. She had worked since childhood, survived rejection, pushed through invisible years, and finally reached the top, yet she still had to defend her place on it. The spotlight that once felt warm now burned at the edges. The public adored Penny, but that created a different fear. Would they still care about her if she wasn't Penny anymore? She worried her entire identity was tied to one character. She smiled for fans, posed for cameras, and delivered jokes on cue. But deep down, she often wondered who she was when the lights went off. Being loved by millions did not protect her from feeling alone. Fame can fill rooms, but still leave a person feeling unseen. Still, she kept going. She showed up to work, no matter how tired she was. She learned to push through doubt, to silence negative voices, and to create her own strength when support felt far away. Her resilience became her quiet rebellion. She refused to let pressure break her. She stayed professional, reliable, and kind, even when her private life felt out of balance. She reminded herself that the little girl who once memorized lines in the back seat of a car would be proud of how far she had come. But no amount of fame could protect her from the limits of her own body. She was working, smiling, and performing at full speed, unaware that everything was about to change without warning. The pace was heavy, the stress was constant, and her life was moving faster than she could process. Just when it seemed she was strong enough to handle anything, life reminded her that strength is not always a choice. And then, in a single fall, the flive ever down, the body takes a blow the soul must answer. Heroes aren't fearless, they're repaired. In 2010, life hit her body with a force she never expected. A normal day with her horse turned into a nightmare when she fell, and her leg shattered on impact. Both the tibia and fibula were broken so badly that doctors feared she might lose the leg. She was rushed into emergency care, and the situation was so serious that she was asked to sign a consent form for possible amputation. She held the pen, hands shaking, trying to understand how her life could change in a single moment. Hours earlier, she was working, laughing, and living normally. Now, she was facing the possibility of waking up without a part of herself. Surgeries came next. Metal rods, screws, and plates were placed inside her leg. The pain was sharp and constant, and she could not escape it. She wasn't used to slowing down. Her life had always moved fast, from set to set, script to script. But now she was trapped in a hospital bed, unable to walk, forced to depend on others for even the simplest things. Production on the show paused her storyline, and she watched life continue without her. She had spent years fighting for visibility, and now she feared being left behind by the very industry she had worked so hard to be part of. Recovery became her new job. Physical therapy pushed her limits. Every movement hurt. Every step felt impossible. But she refused to give up. Pain became her teacher, forcing her to find patience, humility, and a new kind of strength. She learned to move with the pain instead of fighting it. Slowly, she began to heal, not just physically, but mentally. She stopped seeing herself as unbreakable and started seeing herself as someone who could rebuild. 6 weeks later, she returned to the set. The audience and crew welcomed her with applause that wasn't about a joke or a scene, it was about survival. Standing there, she realized that the fall had not taken her career, her spirit, or her future. It had only changed how she carried herself. The scar on her leg became a marker of resilience, and she later joked that it made her feel badass. For the first time, she saw strength not as perfection, but as endurance. The accident shifted her mindset. She no longer measured herself by how flawless she appeared. Instead, she valued her ability to stand back up, even when standing hurt. She learned that life could break the body, but the spirit had a say in how the story continued. Healing the bone was hard. Healing the heart would be harder. What if the truest thing in your life had to stay invisible? While the world saw laughter, romance, and chemistry on screen, her private life held a secret that only a few people knew. During the early seasons of the show, she and Johnny Galecki quietly fell in love. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was gentle, supportive, and real. On set, he became her safe place, someone who understood the pressure, the long hours, and the strange world they were both inside. Their connection grew naturally, built on shared routines, private jokes, and long conversations between scenes. But they decided to keep the relationship hidden from the public and the crew. What felt like protection at first slowly became a weight. The secrecy created a life with two versions of reality. In one world, they smiled for cameras, joked with castmates, and pretended everything was simple. In the other, they cared deeply for each other, but had to act like strangers whenever work called. They couldn't go on normal dates or walk openly together without worrying about attention. On screen, they played out a love story in front of millions. But off-screen, their real love had to stay quiet in the background. It was a strange paradox, acting out romance publicly while hiding the real one. As time passed, the pressure of secrecy and the non-stop rhythm of work made the relationship hard to hold. There was no dramatic fight, no betrayal, no scandal. They simply reached a point where both of them felt the weight of something that should have been joyful but had become complicated. They cared for each other, but they could not keep living in a hidden corner of their own lives. When they finally ended the relationship, the breakup came with sadness, but also respect. They chose kindness instead of bitterness. The hardest part was continuing to work together as if nothing had changed. They still had to perform romantic scenes, even while privately letting go of the real relationship. She later said that this experience was painful because she had to smile for the script while her heart was processing something much different. But they handled it with maturity, and their friendship survived. In time, their bond settled into something steady and trusting, even without romance. She walked away from that chapter with a promise to herself. She would never again allow love to silence her or shrink her life. She would not disappear into someone else's world or hide her feelings to protect an image. She swore she wouldn't vanish inside love again. Then love tests that promise. Some rescues become riptides. After her first quiet heartbreak, she wanted stability, comfort, and something that felt safe and whole. When she met Ryan Sweeting in 2013, everything moved quickly. He was warm, charming, and made her feel chosen at a time when she needed it. Their connection grew fast, and within just a few months, they were engaged, followed soon after by a New Year's Eve wedding. In the beginning, it felt easy and golden. They laughed, shared simple routines, and dreamed of a peaceful future. For a while, she believed she had finally found her lasting home. But real life did not follow the glow of the first months. Ryan's tennis career began to stall because of injuries, and the identity he had built for himself started to slip away. The man who once felt confident and active now struggled with physical pain, lost direction, and growing frustration. As he pulled back from the world, she stepped in, trying to hold everything together. She became the strong one, the planner, the supporter, the person carrying both of their weight. At first, she didn't mind. She loved him and wanted to help. But slowly, that love turned into emotional exhaustion. The home that once felt warm became tense and quiet. She tried to lift him up, but he sank deeper into his own struggles. She was working long hours while also trying to be an emotional rescue line, and she began to lose pieces of herself in the process. Being a caretaker instead of a partner wore her down. The relationship was not filled with yelling or cruelty. It was filled with heaviness, distance, and silence, the kind that slowly eats away at hope. She wanted to save the person she married, but she could not save someone who no longer knew how to stand. By 2015, the marriage had reached a point where love was not enough to fix what had broken. They chose divorce. It hurt, but she refused to let bitterness take root. Instead of trying to erase the past, she chose to transform it. The wedding date tattoo on her back was turned into a moth, a symbol of change, growth, and survival. A reminder that some chapters close so better ones can open. She spoke kindly about Ryan in public, never attacking his character, showing that endings do not have to be cruel. After the divorce, she returned to tennis, not as a competitor, but as a way to breathe again. The court became her space to release stress, reconnect with herself, and remember who she was before heartbreak and responsibility blurred her identity. Through this chapter, she learned one of her hardest lessons. Sometimes, love means letting go, not holding on. Peace arrives in a saddle and open fields until silence grows between two good people. Not every ending has a villain, some have distance. After her painful divorce, she was not looking for fast love or dramatic promises. She wanted calm. She wanted someone who understood silence, nature, and the need to breathe. Through her love of horses, she met Kaley Cuoco, a man whose world was built around open space, early mornings, and a quiet kind of passion. Their relationship grew slowly and gently. There was no rush, no performance, no pressure to pretend. For the first time in a long time, she felt like love could be peaceful instead of overwhelming. Their bond was steady, and when they married in a ranch ceremony surrounded by the life they both cherished, it felt like a second chance at happiness, one that was grounded instead of explosive. At first, their life together seemed balanced. They shared the same love for animals and the simple joy of being outdoors. But slowly, differences in their lifestyles began to stretch the space between them. Carl's days started at sunrise in the stables, while her schedule revolved around long filming hours, late-night shoots, and unpredictable routines. He found peace in quiet mornings and the rhythm of horses. She lived in a world of scripts, lights, and deadlines. Neither was wrong. They were simply moving in different directions. Kindness stayed, but closeness faded. They did not fight, and they did not break each other. They just stopped arriving in the same moments. He spent more time at the ranch, while she spent more time on set or traveling for work. They supported each other, yet their lives no longer touched at the same points. What once felt like comfort slowly turned into distance. They tried to give each other space, believing that space meant maturity, but space also created silence. They cared, but they grew apart. By 2021, they made the painful but respectful decision to separate. Their public statement was graceful, and their private actions matched it. No blame, no bitterness, no war. Just two good people who could not share the same path anymore. She later said, "I believe in love, not forever," a line that revealed both acceptance and exhaustion. She still believed in love, but she no longer believed that love always lasts. Even though the marriage ended, she stayed grateful for the calm that chapter gave her. It taught her that love doesn't fail only because of hurt. Sometimes it ends because two hearts want different lives. After the separation, she turned her attention back to work with new energy, pushing forward, focusing on her career, and convincing herself that her story could still be whole without romance. She chooses work with new ferocity, unaware life is about to hand her a different kind of script. When love stops demanding, it can finally stay. After years of trying to hold relationships together with effort, silence, or endless compromise, she finally met someone she didn't have to perform for. In 2022, she crossed paths with actor Tom Pelphrey, and their connection felt different right from the start. She later said it felt like remembering, as if she already knew him before the first conversation was over. With him, she did not feel watched, judged, or measured. She simply felt seen. Their relationship didn't rush or explode. It grew in a steady, honest way. There were no secrets, no hidden corners, and no pressure to pretend. For the first time in many years, she chose presence over performance. She didn't need to impress him, and he didn't expect her to prove anything. He cared for the parts of her that life had exhausted, not just the parts the world loved. Then, life surprised them with something even bigger. In late 2022, she learned she was pregnant. The news brought shock, joy, fear, and gratitude all at once. She hadn't expected motherhood, and for a long time she believed she might never have a child. But the moment she knew a baby was on the way, something inside her shifted. She began to slow down, to breathe differently, to feel differently. When their daughter, Matilda, was born in March 2023, she described the gesture of you say, the moment, as life-changing. Holding her baby for the first time, she said, made everything else feel small. The career, the pressure, the attention, none of it mattered as much as the tiny life in her arms. Motherhood brought happiness, but also exhaustion she had never known. The sleepless nights, constant feedings, and daily worry were overwhelming at times, but she welcomed it. She called it the happiest exhaustion of her life. There were mornings when she looked in the mirror with messy hair, tired eyes, and no makeup, yet still felt more confident and complete than she ever did on red carpets. Tom stayed by her side, supporting her through every hard night and every learning moment. He didn't try to fix her struggles, he stood with her through them, and that made all the difference. After childbirth, she developed tendinitis in her wrists from constantly holding and lifting the baby. The pain made even simple tasks difficult. She had to wear wrist braces, which frustrated her, but also humbled her. Those tiny braces taught her a big lesson. She didn't have to push through pain to prove her strength. She could slow down, ask for help, and choose grace over grind. For a woman who had survived by always pushing forward, this was a new kind of strength, one rooted in softness, not struggle. Motherhood quiets the world and brings back a voice she thought she'd lost years ago. Some people leave, their kindness doesn't. Long before she became a worldwide name, she met someone who shaped her heart, her work, and her idea of what it means to show up for others. In 2003, while filming the sitcom 8 Simple Rules, she worked alongside John Ritter, who played her father on screen. What she didn't expect was that he would quietly become a father figure off-screen as well. John wasn't just funny, he was patient, gentle, and deeply human. He greeted every crew member, remembered everyone's name, and made even nervous newcomers feel welcome. For a young actress still growing into herself, this mattered. He taught her that talent can get attention, but kindness earns respect. She often spoke about how John helped shape her early career. He didn't lecture. He guided by example. He showed her how a lead actor sets the tone on set, how laughter and respect can live together, and how no one is too important to be humble. When he suddenly passed away in 2003, the loss shook her in a way she was not prepared for. She was young, and the grief was heavy. One day, She had a mentor she trusted, and the next day he was simply gone. For a long time, she struggled to talk about it, because the pain felt too personal and too close to her heart. But with time, the grief changed shape. It didn't disappear, but it matured. What once felt like a wound slowly became a compass. She carried John's lessons with her into every new set, every new project, and every leadership role she grew into. When she became a producer years later, she tried to create the same environment he once gave her, a place where people felt safe, valued, and seen. She made it a habit to learn her crew's names, to show appreciation often, and to spread kindness even on stressful days. While others might lead with authority, she tried to lead with warmth, because that is what she had been shown. His influence also shaped her personal outlook. She learned that success means nothing if you forget to care about people. She learned that humor can soften heavy moments, and that listening is sometimes more powerful than speaking. Most of all, she learned that kindness leaves a mark that outlives applause. John Ritter became the quiet teacher she carried through every chapter of her life. Even now, she still mentions him with gratitude and softness, as if part of her still hears his voice guiding her forward. His legacy did not end with his final scene. It continued through her choices, her attitude, and the way she treats others. She honors him not with speeches, but with behavior. That is how grief became gentleness, and how loss became purpose. She did not let his memory break her. She let it build her. With a steadier compass, she steps into what she's meant to make, not just star in. Power isn't volume, it's choosing what gets heard. After spending years in front of the camera, she reached a point where she no longer wanted to depend on others to shape her path. She wanted control over the stories she told, the projects she worked on, and the tone she brought into the world. This led her to create her own production company. Yes, Norman Productions, named after her beloved dog, Norman. It was a personal name for a personal mission. She wanted to make work that mattered, not just work that entertained. Her first major success as a producer was The Flight Attendant, a project that allowed her to step into a darker, more complex role while also helping guide the show behind the scenes. It proved she could carry a story that wasn't built on punchlines, and it earned praise from both viewers and critics. At the same time, she explored another side of entertainment through voice work, bringing Harley Quinn to life in animation. It gave her a different kind of freedom, letting her play, experiment, and show range without the pressure of on-screen perfection. These choices showed that she was not afraid to evolve or take risks. Yes, Norman Productions became her way of shaping the industry on her own terms. She focused on women-led stories, honest characters, and writing that reflected real emotion, not stereotypes. She wanted to support writers, directors, and actors who often struggled to be seen or heard. For her, success began to mean lifting others, not just lifting herself. Alongside her work in entertainment, she also stayed committed to animal rescue and welfare. She donated time, money, and attention to shelters and organizations that protected animals. Her brand and her heart moved in the same direction. Helping animals was not a side project, it was part of her identity. As her professional world grew, her personal world changed too. She began building a home that felt like a sanctuary instead of a showroom. She filled it with animals, open space, and quiet routines. Mornings were for feeding, walking, and being outdoors. Evenings were for peace, not pressure. She designed a life that protected her mental health and emotional balance. The stables, the dogs, the soft early hours of the day. These were not random details. They were choices. She had lived through chaos, heartbreak, and constant noise. Now she chose peace by design, not by accident. Her home life reflected a woman who had finally stepped off the hamster wheel of perfection. She no longer connected her value to ratings, headlines, or applause. She woke up for her family, her animals, her projects, and her peace. The girl who once fought for attention now fought for balance. The actress who once feared being forgotten now felt no need to chase approval. Through producing, caregiving, and creating a calm personal world, she found a life that felt full instead of loud. After surviving storms, what does success look like when you no longer need to prove anything? Happiness, it turns out, is quiet and stubborn. After everything she has lived through, she no longer chases applause or tries to outrun expectations. She now measures success in calm mornings, in the sound of her daughter's laughter, and in work that feeds her heart instead of her ego. She isn't driven by the need to prove herself anymore. She has already earned her place, and now she wants to build something that lasts beyond her face on a screen. Her legacy is not fame. It is kindness, resilience, authenticity, and the lives she touches through her work, her actions, and her voice. Motherhood changed her in ways no script ever could. The daily tasks, feeding, holding, calming, teaching, became a kind of quiet holiness. There is nothing glamorous about sleepless nights, messy floors, and schedules built around a little life. But she calls it her greatest role. The small moments matter most now. Baby giggles in the morning, tiny hands reaching for her, family walks with strollers and dogs, and evenings that end without stress or spotlight. She once lived in front of millions. Today, she lives for the handful of people and pets under her roof. And that has brought her a deeper peace than fame ever could. She rides horses, not for competition anymore, but for joy. The stables are no longer an escape, they are a home for her spirit. Riding gives her balance, freedom, and presence. No trophies, no pressure, just connection. It reminds her of who she is when no one is watching. She has learned that fulfillment is not found in winning. It is found in being grounded, grateful, and alive in the moment you are in. Her scars, both physical and emotional, no longer feel like marks of failure or pain. They are part of her story. They show she survived, adapted, and kept going. She does not hide them, and she does not apologize for them. They are proof that strength does not always roar. Sometimes strength is simply refusing to break, even when life gives you every reason to. Sometimes strength is waking up the next day and choosing to try again. Now, with everything she has learned, she stands in the golden hour of her life. Not the beginning, not the end, but the warm middle, a place where she finally belongs to herself. She laughs easier, she forgives faster, she holds on more gently, and she moves forward with the understanding that peace is not something you find once, it is something you choose every day. Before the story closes, she leaves space for the viewer to reflect. Not on her fame, not on her struggles, but on themselves. What do we chase? What do we fear? What do we measure our lives by? Her journey reminds us that attention is temporary, but purpose is not. That applause fades, but love remains. And that sometimes the real victory is simply becoming a person you are proud to be when no one is clapping. But if peace is a choice, how do you keep choosing it when the world keeps calling you back to the stage?